Thank you, please. What a Colorado welcome. Thank you so much. Wow. Congressman Beaupre, thank you for those generous words, and also great to have the Attorney General here, Attorney General Suthers, and I appreciate we have a person running for right here. We have Joe Coors here running for Congress. Make sure everybody knows Joe. And how about Missy Franklin, huh? Isn't that something? Wow. Isn't that something? That is really exciting. Just a Colorado girl with a big heart. I met another Colorado girl with a big heart this morning. Her name is Michaela Hicks. You don't know Michaela, but she was involved in that terrible shooting in Aurora. She was hit by a bullet. She was in the theater next door to the most terrible one, and the bullet went into her mouth and took out some teeth and part of her jaw. But she is here and doing well. I guess maybe by applause we show how united we are with the tragedy of those people, how much we love them, how much we care for them. I'm sure you know this. I mean, this tragedy has impacted the community of Aurora. I'm sure it's impacted the entire state. The trauma here has got to be extraordinary. But across the country, people are thinking about Aurora and the tragedy there and the lives that have been lost and lives changed forever. We love you and we pray for you. You're in our hearts and you're in our prayers. Today I come to talk about making things better. And I'm going to start off with a bit of a report card. Some of you have been handed a little piece of paper here. If you haven't gotten that, you will. And I see some people opening these things up. Well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. You don't need to open it up yet. But we're going to talk about that because, you know, ever since I was in elementary school, we had report cards. And you saw on the report card how you were doing. When I was younger, they used to give us A, B, C, D, E, F. Then there was a period of time when they just said, well, he's doing well or not so well, or he could do better. You know, we got a little soft in the grading. But I'm going to be a little more straightforward with grading today because, you see, when the president was here as a candidate, accepting the nomination 4 years ago in Colorado, he laid out the report card upon which he hoped to be judged by. And this was in his speech. He said, look, I can tell you how we measure success and how we measure progress. And he went through one by one the things he would use to evaluate whether he was making progress or not. He said, number one, I can judge progress by how many people find a job. Now, on that basis, we haven't seen what we would have hoped to have seen because, in fact, we have fewer jobs that have been created. We have 23 million Americans today that are out of work or underemployed. People who have pulled out of the workforce, 23 million. And of those technically unemployed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, it's still above 8%. He said he'd hold unemployment below 8%. It has not been below 8% for 41 straight months. That's the longest period in American history. And so the president has been unsuccessful in his number one objective as laid out by his own measure. Then there was the next one. He said, we're going to see how many jobs we have that can pay for a good mortgage. Well, then we've seen record numbers of foreclosures and of course, home prices that are down. He said one more thing. He's going to judge success by what happens to average family income. Well, that's gone down. Did you know the average family in America has seen their income go down by $4,000 over the last 3.5 years? Now, he had another measure. He said, I'll measure success by whether someone who has a good idea will go out and start a business. Yeah. Yeah, I hope he understands that actually the people that have a good idea and start a business are the ones who actually build the business. We're at a 30-year low in the number of business startups that have occurred, a 30-year low. Perhaps because he thinks government is the one that helps build businesses as opposed to people. We're seeing that kind of result. And then one more. A little later, he said this. He said he was going to cut the deficit in half. You know, it's sad, and I mean, it's just extraordinary to have someone go out and make those kinds of promises and not be able to deliver on them. I've got a little report card here, and it shows his report card. If you look on there with the arrows, you'll look at it. It says there, jobs, and on the far left, the Obama record. It has there a little downward arrow, a little red arrow, all right? Jobs, we have fewer jobs under President Obama. Then there's unemployed and underemployed. That's gone up. That's in red because that's a bad direction. Then we have the unemployment rate. That's bad too. That's why that's in red. Then we have home prices. They've gone down. That's in red too. Then we have the budget deficit. That's gone up. That's in red. And then finally we have family income. That's gone down. All measures he laid out are measures that have gone in the wrong direction. Now, when I got elected governor of my state, I had the people I was traveling with, I said, I want you to write down all the things I promised during my campaign. All the things I said I'd fight to try and do. Now, I had a legislature that was 87% Democrat. And so I knew that not all the things I wanted to do would get passed, but I'd get as many passed as I could, and I'd fight for all of them. And I said to the people who traveled with me, would you please write down all the promises I made during the campaign? And I added a few more in my inaugural speech and the State of the State address, so we ended up with 100 promises. And halfway through my term as governor, I actually published all those promises and then checked where they were, which ones I'd succeeded on, which ones I'd tried and couldn't get done, which ones I was still working on. Only 2 were ones I hadn't yet been able to take far enough to put them down as a success. And so I have my own record, and you can see it, by the way, on here. If you look on there, see, obviously I got to do the grading here today, which is very good. But you can check up on me on this. Jobs, we added jobs. I added jobs. We've added more jobs than the president has in the entire country, but I added jobs. Unemployment rate, I brought the unemployment rate down from 5.6 to 4.7. The home prices went up. Budget deficit, I came in, there was almost a $3 billion budget gap. I closed it without raising taxes. And finally, family income, that also got better. So in all those measures, he got a little red arrow, I got a green arrow. And if you see on the right-hand side, if I'm elected president of the United States of America, my promise to you is that I'm going to get all those arrows green again. Now, the reason I took you through all that is that I know that in campaigns, talk can be cheap. You can say anything, but results, if they're not done the right way, they can be real expensive. And you look at this president, and he talked about a number of things he was going to do. I remember watching him speak in front of those Greek columns. He won't want to remind us of Greece these days, but it got a lot of people excited. A lot of people said, boy, if he can do those things, that's going to be terrific. But those people are disappointed. And if you look at his report card, I mean, I know he will be able to speak eloquently and describe all the great things he's doing and what he's going to do, but look at the results. And you look at the results, and it's been a disappointment. His policies have not worked. They have not got America back to work again. My policies will work, and I know that because they've worked in the past. I spent 25 years in the private sector. I understand how businesses decide to grow, when they decide to shrink, why they decide to go overseas, how they decide to come back here. I understand what it takes to get America working again. I understand that it's small businesses that create jobs in America, that people create jobs, not government, and I'm going to get America working again. Thank you. Now I want to lay out for you specifically what I'm going to do. It's 5 things, all right? 5 things we're going to do. I want you to remember 5 things. I think we're up to 5 things, right? We can remember 5 things. We're going to get more jobs and more take-home pay by doing 5 things right. Number 1, and you see it up there, we're going to have energy independence in this country. We are going to... In 8 years, if I'm president of the United States, my commitment is to get America and North America energy independent. We will not have to buy any energy from anywhere else in the world, not from Venezuela, not from the Middle East. We will be, let me make it clear, we will be North America energy independent. Now, I know how to go about doing that. One of the things we're going to do is to really open up federal lands and private lands for drilling, oil, gas, We're also going to make sure that we continue to use our coal. We have about a 250-year supply of coal. Want to keep using our coal. I like renewables. We're going to continue to see wind and solar as important parts of our growth of our energy resources. And by the way, we are going to build that pipeline bringing oil in from Canada. This is not just hope. I mean, we've looked field by field. We've looked place by place, area by area to say how much kind of growth can we see? What are we going to see area by area? How can we get America and North America to a point where we are energy sufficient, where we don't have to buy oil from the Middle East and from Venezuela and other places where we don't always have the world's best friends. And so I'm going to put this out after this little speech here. You're going to see exactly how we get there. But this is not just an idea. This is energy independence for North America. And what it's going to do is not only put a lot of people to work in the energy sector, and that's terrific, but in addition to that, because we're going to have low-cost energy here by taking advantage of our resources like coal and natural gas and oil, renewables, we're going to see manufacturing come back. Low-cost energy brings back manufacturing. That's number 1. Now, by the way, when President Obama was running for office, he said that if his policies were put in place, energy prices would naturally skyrocket. And you're already seeing that. For the average family in this country, energy prices, your utility bill has gone up by $300. And that's real money, by the way. This, for middle class American families, $300 is a lot of money. And this president's seen that go up like that. I don't want to see that happen. I want to make sure that we keep our energy costs down for our families, for middle-class families, and also for manufacturers to bring jobs back. That's number 1. Get us energy independent. Number 2, I want us to have the skills to succeed. I will no longer sit by and watch our schools be compared with the rest of the world in the bottom quartile, the bottom third. We have to have the best schools in the world. And for that to happen, one thing I've already laid out is that every child ought to have the chance to go to the school where they can get the best education. Every parent ought to have a choice as to where they send their student. And so all the federal dollars that go out to schools to provide for education for the disadvantaged, for those that are poor, for those that are disabled, all those dollars are going to be tied to the student, and the student can take them to the school of their choice. We're going to have more choice in America. And getting our schools to be the top performers as opposed to in the bottom quartile, getting our schools to be better is not a mystery for me, because I happen to be in a state where before I became governor, Republicans and Democrats came together and fashioned some education reform proposals, and I continue to push them further. And we now have Massachusetts ranked number 1 of all 50 states in education. I understand what it takes to get our schools to be better. So number 1 is energy. Number 2 is the skills we need to succeed. Number 3 is trade that works for America. It's good for a nation like ours to trade with other nations. But if nations like China cheat, we got to stop that. I was with an attorney who represents a company that makes various industrial products like valves and switches and so forth. And he said they had some problems because some people were calling them up with warranty problems, and they went out to find the defective product, and sure enough, it had their brand name on it, had their serial number on it. Just turned out that they hadn't sold their product to the particular company that had their brand name and serial number on it. These were counterfeit goods coming in from China, where people are taking their brand name, putting their serial numbers on it, putting their packaging around it, selling it as if it's their company's. This costs American jobs. This counterfeit products, it costs jobs here. And then, of course, there's people hacking into our computers and stealing trade secrets and stealing technology. There are reports, maybe you've seen the story about this Apple store they found in China, where a wonderful Apple store selling Apple products, except it wasn't a real Apple store, and they weren't selling real Apple products. These practices kill American jobs. And I'm going to finally sit down with China and make sure that they understand that if they cheat, there are going to be consequences, because we're not going to let them walk all over us and take our jobs. And by the way, when I say trade that works for America, it's not just that. It's also opening up new places for us to sell products. We have right next door to us an area with a massively fast-growing middle class, Latin America. We have natural advantages being in our hemisphere, time zone, so many people who speak Spanish and Portuguese here. We will be able to be very effective in trading with Latin America, and we will create American jobs by opening up aggressively trade in Latin America. I'm also going to create a zone, I call it the Reagan trade zone, where nations have free trade and they agree not to manipulate their currency and to live by the laws of intellectual property. If we do that, you're going to see a third big step that's going to get this economy going. Number one, energy. Number two, skills. Number three, trade. Number four, we got to cut the deficit and finally get us a balanced budget. And let me tell you, this is something, I mean, mathematically, if you put a little formula on the board, you'd say, okay, to cut the deficit, you have three things you could do. You could have a faster growing economy, because if the economy is growing faster and wages are going up, people pay more taxes, that would cut the deficit. Number two, you could raise taxes on people, and mathematically, that would, yeah, boo, right? You could cut the deficit that way. Number three, you could cut back on spending. Those are the three mathematical ways of doing it. And you see, the way I will do it is by getting more growth and by also reducing spending, because more growth and less spending is the best way to cut our budget deficit. And our friends across the aisle and the president, they have a different view. They think, well, we should just raise taxes. That's the primary way they think we should cut the deficit. The problem is this: taxes are connected to growth. And when you raise taxes, you lower growth. The reason we're so opposed to raising taxes is not just because taxes hurt people and kill jobs. It's also because when you raise taxes, you slow down growth. Fewer jobs get started. Fewer businesses start to grow. And so the more they raise taxes, the more they lower growth, and the more they're unable to achieve their objective of creating a balanced budget. It's like a dog trying to chase its tail. You just don't ever get there. So the right answer is not to raise taxes. The right answer is to reduce government spending and finally create the incentives to put people back to work again and grow this economy. Number one, energy. Number two, skills. Number three, we're going to make sure and get the trade right for America. Number four, we're going to balance our budget, get America to cut our spending and our deficit, get growth again. And number five, we're going to champion small business. We want to help small businesses build it themselves. We want the people who work in business to be successful and grow their enterprises. And how am I going to do that? One is by lowering taxes on small business, making it easier for them to keep more of their money to grow. I'm also going to make sure that the regulators and the regulations on small businesses don't drown them in red tape and keep them from being able to grow. I'm also going to do something that's scaring a heck of a lot of small businesses. And that is, we got to get rid of Obamacare. It's now, mind you, there are a lot of things we have to do to make health care work better for Americans. Number one is it's very expensive. We got to get the cost of health care down. Unfortunately, the president's plan does not bring down the cost of health care. Actually, this is again back in his campaign, he said that he was going to reduce health insurance premiums for the average family by $2,500 by the end of his first term. Instead, they have already gone up by $2,500 for the average family. All right, so he has not been able to do that job. I will focus on getting the cost of health care down. We also have to make sure that people with pre-existing conditions don't have to be denied care. We want to make sure they can get the insurance that they need, and we want... We want people to be willing to come into medicine, become doctors and nurses, and to serve. These things we'll do, but Obamacare, we simply can't afford trillions of dollars of more federal spending. It gets more and more expensive as time goes on. We simply can't afford to have federal bureaucrats telling us what kind of health care we can have. And we sure as heck can't have Obamacare cut Medicare by over $500 billion. Now, if we do those 5 things, if we get ourselves in a position where we're able to do those simple 5 things, take advantage of our energy, number one. Number 2, get our skills right. I'm talking about our kids and also our adults. Write programs to get people back to work and have the skills to succeed. Number 3, opening up trade and keeping the cheaters from being able to steal American jobs. And number 4, getting us on track to a balanced budget by lowering our deficits. And number 5, by championing small business, making it easier for small businesses to grow and thrive in every way possible. We do those things, you're going to see this economy come roaring back. Manufacturing, jobs of all kinds are going to come back. We've gone through, we get our economists, we go through and say, okay, how many jobs will be created just by doing those things? And I got more coming down the road, but just those things alone create 12 million new American jobs. 12 million jobs. This is the path to more jobs and more take-home pay and a brighter future for you and for your kids. And I know that because I've seen it. I spent my life in the private sector. I know how jobs come and go. I worked in a state. I found a way to work across the aisle, by the way. When I look, we've got to have someone that goes to Washington that buries the hatchet and says, you know what, they're good Democrats, they're good Republicans that care about America. Let's work together to get the American people working, get some growth again. This is important. Getting America working, this isn't a statistic we're talking about. 23 million Americans out of work or underemployed. 23 million. It's a tragedy. It's a moral failing for a country as successful and wealthy as ours to have had policies that kept people from going to work. I want to get people back to work that want to work. Put them in good jobs with more take-home pay. I care about this. I want to help the American people. I've met with people who are struggling as a result of the policies that just haven't worked to get America working again. I met with a young woman who'd been out of work for 2 years. She was a marketing executive, been out of work for 2 years, looking for work now. I met a woman in Florida who said that in order to pay for a second child, they took a second mortgage out on their home. And then home values collapsed. And they now wonder whether they can keep their home. Met a couple in Wisconsin that in their mid-60s, planning on retiring. And they had a couple of duplexes that they were going to use rental income from to pay for their retirement. Now that's not going to happen because of what's happened in the housing market. People are hurting and suffering. Middle-income families, single moms in particular, raising kids, going to work, and harder to pay for gas, harder to pay for energy bills, having to get your kids to child care and be able to go to work at the same time. People need help. They need a president that's going to go to work to help the American people have good jobs and better take-home pay, and I will, and we're going to get it done. You guys, you're each going to get, by the way, that little report card I told you about, and you're going to see all the detail behind those 5 steps, all right? You're going to see it all here. It's going to keep you up all night reading those things. But I want you to know this. It's not going to look strange to you. As you read through the things that I've just described and some of the sub-points that we're going to put in place to make those effective, you're not going to think, well, this is kind of a foreign concept. I've never heard of that. Energy independence. Giving us our skills to succeed, trade that works for America, cutting the deficit, championing small business. You're going to recognize that's as America can be. You're going to understand that what we're talking about is helping people in America build a better future for themselves, not expecting government to give them anything they might want. Government is always going to be there to make sure those that can't care for themselves can be cared for, and that we have a safety net for people in this country that get in trouble. Government's a key player and a key participant in this. But you know what? If we want to get this economy going with better jobs and better take-home pay, it's going to take the private sector and jobs to grow again. And that's how we're going to get the job done. This is American. This is American. It's as American as the very first days when the founders of this country wrote the Declaration of Independence and said that our rights were not given to us by government, but our rights came from the Creator. And among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In this country, we're free to pursue happiness as we choose. And when we do pursue happiness as we choose, and if we're lucky enough to get that promotion we were hoping for, or lucky enough to be able to do so well in school, we're on the honor roll, or lucky enough to build a business and make it successful, then we take responsibility for that because we built it, government did not. This is an America of individual liberty and individual initiative. I gotta tell you, I can't wait to get to Washington. I can't wait to get there. I'm so excited about getting America working again. I'm so excited about restoring the principles that made this nation the strongest in the world. I don't want to transform America into something it's not. I want to restore to America the principles that made us the hope of the earth. We're going to do it together. We're going to bring back America. Thank you so much. Thank you.